Hello?
Hi, Danny.
Hi there. Tell me your name and where you're joining us from.
Hi, I'm Ishita, and I'm joining you from Bangalore.
Lovely, Ishita. Thanks for getting on the podcast. Today is a good day. India has qualified for the finals of the ICC World Cup. Are you excited?
Super excited.
I think this is the best Indian team I have seen ever. Do you agree?
I would say after about 2 or 3 decades, but yes, definitely
Yeah.
very good team.
Like halfway through the World Cup, I felt like I was watching a simulation. Like there's no way we've ever been this good. So,
Mm.
yeah. Good luck to us on the final this Sunday.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, Ishita, let's get down to business. Tell me, what would you like to bitch about today?
I want to bitch about the helplessness around current socio-politics in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Okay. So something's been getting you down, I reckon.
Yeah, I think you just open your phone, you get information, and there's nothing that makes you feel up about the world.
It's tough, isn't it? Like life was so much simpler on the internet when all we had to do was argue about whether it was a blue dress or a green dress. Remember those days?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it feels like that point in our history is so far behind now, and every time you open social media, and you're absolutely correct, all you see is death and destruction and hate and apathy. It's quite overwhelming, especially if you're someone who's sensitive to these things. Would you say you are one of them?
Oh, yes. I'm totally guilty of that, perhaps.
Guilty of what?
I think taking it too seriously when I hear the way
Mm-hmm.
the world talks about it, it seems
Right.
like for so many people, it's just all okay. And that just kills me.
Yeah, there's too much normalization.
Hmm.
I recently posted a joke on Instagram. It's a joke I told at a live show where technology has come such a long way. Like back in the day, if you wanted to use a phone, you had to walk out to a public phone, payphone, and use one of those rotary devices. And today we have smartphones with touchscreens where you can watch a genocide from the comfort of your living room. It's it's bizarre. I never thought I would ever write a joke like that, but that's what it's come to. Everything has become so normal,
Hmm.
and it almost seems like it's going to take a hell of a lot more for us to move. Do you feel?
And that is why I use the word helplessness, because you really don't know what to do with all this information. So there is one, we
Hmm.
didn't have information and we were looking for it. And now we
Yeah,
have it, but we still can't do anything about it.
that's the bizarre thing, right? I remember, like, I think a few years back, I was talking to some friends, and I think we were talking about the Holocaust, and I said it would be there's no way we could have something like that in our time with the internet and social media and everything. There's no way people would stand for something like this. It's easy, probably easier to do something like that at a time where the media is controlled and you control the narrative and you can get your way. But with social media, there's no way we would get to witness a genocide in our times. And look at where we are. How wrong was I?
Hmm. And it's worse, in fact. The stats
Mm,
seem to make it look much more grave. And not just social media, it's also about not learning from our own mistakes. So
yeah.
all this apathy of the past, we have read it, we've written about it, we have made all sorts of moving films about it. So
Yeah.
what makes us repeat it?
And when it's time to actually put your foot down and stand up and be counted, there are so few.
Mm,
Like, it blows my mind. It blows my mind even today with everything that's going on with Israel and Palestine. I see so many influential people who are friends of mine
mm.
not saying a single word because maybe because they're concerned about ticket sales or working with brands or whatever. But I'm just like, man, there are kids being blown to bits over there, and half the world just doesn't give a fuck.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. Hmm. And it's world over. It's also something that seems to replicate from one geography to another. So
yeah.
this normalization is also not from one context or from one side of the
Hmm.
story.
Yeah.
Sometimes feels
Everybody's
very close to
polarized.
home. Yeah.
And it should, right? Because we don't have to look too far back down our own history. We were colonized, we were occupied, we were exploited, we were murdered in the millions, we were looted and plundered. We know exactly what this feels like. If your grandparents are around, they'll tell you stories. So it's not like we can't relate to being oppressed. We can. And it just, the thought that makes me really sad is that if this were happening to us in India right now, and if the rest of the world just sat silent and said nothing, it would break my heart more than the actual oppression itself. And I think that's what's really getting to people who are in these situations, because they do have access to the internet. They can see what the rest of the world is saying, they can see what the rest of the world is doing, and that's barely, uh, you know, I mean,
Hmm.
it's honestly not much to write home about. But at the same time, it's not all gloom and doom. I am seeing lots of videos of protests against, occupation, against the genocide coming out of cities all over the world. So it is heartening to see that people are taking to the streets. People are trying to exert as much pressure as they can on their governments. And I think for something like this to actually stop, it has to reach critical mass. Like the world has to wake up. The world has to come to a standstill. And sadly, I feel like we are still a long way off from that.
But you know what? When you say this, it just makes me think because one of the ways I have been thinking about this is that there's a societal behavior which needs to be changed. But when you see
Mm-hmm.
so many of us who take to the streets, so many of them writing about it, taking stands and not taking
Yeah.
up certain roles or jobs, but that doesn't seem to make enough of an impact. I know definitely it's very heartening, it's very empathetic, it definitely
Mm-hmm.
gives you belief or at least hope, but that's not enough. So then you suddenly realize, yes, the world is still in the hands of a few. Our lives are still in the hands of those few.
I think that will always be the case. And that's
Yeah,
been the formula for war as well, right? I mean, some
yeah,
people want to call it war. If you're an oppressor, you want to call it a war. And, when it's convenient, you call it terrorism. But it's just outright violence. And these calls for war, if you notice, especially in the last 100 years, have all been made by old men whose children sleep safely at night. It's
mm,
always somebody else's kids who are paying the price, whether you're in the army or whether you're a civilian casualty. It's always somebody else's children. Like, I miss the old days where hundreds of years ago, where if you had to go to war, the king would have to lead his army into war. Yeah.
yes,
You know what I mean? Like, so then you really had to put your money where your mouth is. So if you were invading a country, you better had good reason to invade it. Whereas now you have all these old cocks sitting in their safe, in the safety net of, all the security and the palaces and the White House and wherever the fuck they are, deciding to end millions of lives just on a whim. That's
yeah.
just what it is. And the reason why you feel so helpless is because at the end of the day you realize you are just a number. You are not a human being to them. You are just a number that is getting in the way of something that they want. And it's almost always resources that they don't have in their own country. This isn't a play. What's happening in Palestine right now, let's be honest, is not a play about who got there first, which
No,
religion is correct, about who the land belongs to. No, this is clearly about strategic geopolitical positioning in the Middle East because
yeah.
of the power and the money that's at stake. So that's what makes me really sad, that we are all just pawns. We are all, we just a head count. that
Hmm.
is either standing in the way or standing with them. I think, and in somewhere in between all of that, I think we've lost our humanity.
Yeah, very true. I mean, I sometimes even wonder what is humanity to a lot of people, but I mean, because it seems like we are able to justify killing for our own safety, and then that's also seen as a humanitarian
Yeah,
approach. So then this ours and theirs suddenly kicks in, and then you never know who is whose. And that's why I think when we even say, I mean, of course, I know when you said children are getting uh, are getting targeted, but
blown to
I think
bits. Yeah.
yeah, the bigger word perhaps is every time it's the vulnerable that's
Yep.
really sacrificed, right? So whether it's children,
Yep.
whether it's women, whether it's
Yep.
Dalits, whether it's, I mean, so it's caste, it's race, anybody
Yeah.
who is different, who is lesser important in this game of resources and power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it could then be one whole strip of a country or a
Which is so
community.
bizarre if you think about it, right? Which is
Yeah,
so bizarre. All the so called minorities or the people that are perceived to be lesser than others because of the color of their skin or the religion that they follow, all of these people are the ones who are adding spice and flavor to the world.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you travel anywhere, which cuisine do you enjoy the most? Not the local cuisine. It's
Hmm.
always the immigrant food. It's always immigrant food. Like one of the most disappointing things for me is that when I first traveled to the UK was how shitty their local food was. I mean, you spent hundreds of years plundering our country for fucking spices, and you killed so many of us for it. And this is what you do with your food. We had to move there and set up our own restaurants because your food was that bland.
And those restaurants are usually not empty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, it's always either like Middle Eastern food or Mexican food. It's always food that comes from people of color that
Hmm.
is making everybody happy. So, how the hell are we this inferior race if that is how racism is perpetuated? You know what I mean? Makes no sense.
Yes, yeah, it doesn't.
Racism is the biggest con. It's the biggest
Hmm.
con that has been pulled all over the world. In my opinion, the least uh, effective um, melanin content is kind of dictating what the rest of the world uh, should be doing. How should they be living? Who should who should die? Who should not die? It's bizarre. Like white supremacy is bizarre. It should, I don't know.
But then perhaps we have only created it. So for me, it just keeps coming back to us as a society, us as communities and groups who aspire. And do we think when we think of our aspirations? Think critically, of
Mm.
course, we think, but we suddenly want to become like somebody, become like them. And in that, what are we losing? So much of ourselves.
Because I think what has happened is I think even India has that colonial hangover, right?
Yes.
We believe the lies that were told to us generations ago that white skin is superior, dark skin is inferior. I think and I think a lot of countries all over the world, that the psychological damage that has been caused by these invasions and occupations and wiping off of native people, in so many parts of the world, that is a narrative that has been fed down for generations upon generation. And we all believe that somehow, yes, we are lesser, so we probably deserve this, or they are lesser, so they probably deserve this. I mean, look at
Mm.
the outpouring of support that was there for Ukraine when it was invaded by Russia, and then comparatively look at the outpouring of support for Palestine. It's because we continuously believe the lies that have been told to us. Because I guess in a way it's also easier for us to function.
Mm.
Oh, because America said that Hamas is everywhere, so they should bomb all of Palestine and get rid of Hamas. We should back them because America said it. Like, I don't think we've ever had the ability to critically think for ourselves. We've all of us have been funneled into our own echo chambers, and we just believe what we want to believe, and anybody who does not believe what we believe deserves to die. Ugh.
And that's not the vengeance with which we are brought up, right? So I mean, I make it so in my head very human to think of as a
Mm,
kid, you are not told in any of the households that, okay, somebody did something to you, go and hit that person back. You're
mm,
usually taught, doesn't matter which religion, caste, race, status you come from, no mother or a
yeah.
parent teaches you that, go and kill that person, go and hit that person back. You're usually
Yeah.
told to like resolve it
But
or
but
maybe
that's how
not play
hatred
a
works,
game.
right?
Yeah,
Hatred is a tool used by governments all over the world to keep people in check. And then when
true.
you mix it up with religion, you have a winning formula, because the day people are united, the day people get along with one another, is the day they start asking the government questions. And the government or the people in power do not want you to ask questions. They only want you to be angry, they want you to be fearful. And that's the constant state of mind that governments all over the world are trying to keep their citizens in. Always be afraid of something.
Mm.
The
Yeah,
boogeyman.
that is.
Create a boogeyman, make everybody afraid, and then act like you're the savior. I'm going to rescue you from the boogeyman that I've created. And you'd expect that in 2023, with the access to the information from all over the world that we have, that we do better, that we know better.
Yeah, I
But
mean that's the
we don't.
relationship I basically keep building in my head. Yeah. So it's our societal behavior which becomes sort of, what is the right word? They are weapon, yeah, they are tool.
Yeah. But at the same time, you know, but at the same time, Ishita, I don't want to keep it all gloom and doom. I don't want to, like, I don't want to sound defeatist um, in any stretch of the way, because fair enough, it's a bleak time. I understand the helplessness. I feel helpless as well. I mean, at the most, what can I do? I can, post a story in support, or I can share videos, and I can, try and talk to people around me. But that's still better than doing nothing. So I think if there's anybody out there who's also feeling this helplessness, because you're not somebody who's in a position of power, you're not somebody who can affect change, but I think we shouldn't at the same time discount what we can do in little ways that collectively adds up to a lot. So I think
Yes,
it's
I
very
completely.
important, very important, that even though you may feel it's a losing battle, sometimes when I'm like, man, I don't know if this is making a difference at all, but I think any amount of effort in any direction can make a difference. Even if it's as something as small as sharing a news update that's coming from the ground, and not a news media corporation. Real time footage, real time updates. If you can spare some money, donate to a charitable organization that's helping these people that are in trouble. um, Talk to the people around you. There are things that we can do, and we should.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. In fact, for me, the logic even of this conversation is that
Mm-hmm.
it's a positive way, right? I mean, positive way forward. Even if I'm not
Yeah,
you're not making an impact, but the fact that
yeah,
two people find this conversation important enough for it to go on air
yeah.
is
I
kind of
think just for two people to get together and be like, hey, I think this is an important conversation to have, is a good start. you know
exactly. And so even sharing of these stories, but meeting your friends, discussing, finding out the right facts or
mm-hmm.
information,
Yeah.
I think that that would definitely change or hopefully make a small ripple effect.
Yeah. And if nothing, like, something that I've always believed in is, if you are ever in doubt about how to pick a side, I always find that lending a support to the little guy or the underdog, most often than not, ends up being the right side to choose.
Hmm.
Like, does that make sense? I mean, because even if you look at what's happening with in Gaza, or in all of Palestine right now, it's a very simple equation, right? On one side, you have the fourth largest army in the world, and on the other side, you have a population that has no army, no leadership, no basic human rights. It's not even an even battle. It's not
Hmm.
even like a David and a Goliath. It's just a Goliath. There's no David. You're not giving David a chance to be David. So then, in a situation like this, it's so easy to pick a side. You'll be like, yo, you know, it's this is not okay. And I'm just surprised by some of the bullshit arguments that people are using to defend shit like this. People saying stuff like, "Oh, Hamas is using human beings as shields, so we can't do anything. We have to kill all of them." But that's not what you would do if there was an active school shooter who was hiding behind students,
Yeah.
would you? You wouldn't be okay with that. You wouldn't call up parents and go, "Hey, listen, we want to, get the school shooter, but he's hiding behind your kids, so we're going to have to take all of them out."
I really like how you smartly used the American reference here.
Yes, because they are the merchants of death, aren't they? I mean, let's be really honest. If you look at the textbook definition of terrorism, who's been doing the terrorizing?
Hmm.
Who has constantly, from the inception or the founding of that nation, who has constantly been meddling with matters all over the world?
And
I,
they don't even hide it. There's
yeah,
nothing implicit about it.
because they have understood that the average human being is such a stupid person, and stupidity is so easy to control. You get large swaths of stupid people together, it's so easy to control them, it's so easy to manipulate them, and that's what's happening.
Hmm.
I mean, I saw a headline where I think Biden just signed off on like some, I'm not, $100 billion,
Yeah.
102 or $110 billion worth of aid to Israel. Do you know how much money that is for a country that does not have free healthcare, so much homelessness, and all of the other problems that could have been solved with that same money? Student debt, you name it, they have it. And nah,
Yeah.
Americans love war. And as long as they have enough countries around the world willing to participate, we will always be at war in some way or the other. But sadly, you and I live in India, and so there's nothing we can do except criticize them on a podcast.
Nothing that our own leaders are also doing. At least, even if they were
Are you
speaking the same
surprised?
language,
Are you
that would have
surprised?
also given us so much comfort, right? That we're on the right side of the border.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, from our end also, there's nothing. But also on the same note, I definitely feel I have at least some soft corner for when we say Americans, because a lot of feeds
Mm-hmm.
coming from there also, where there are Americans who quite vocal and out there
Yes, yes, I'll
fighting
give
this
that. So exactly. So
war.
again, when I say Americans, or
Yeah.
yeah, when I say Americans or Israelis, or I'm talking purely about the government, right?
Hmm.
It's the people in power, and it's not and their actions are not representative, or not represent. What's the word? Their actions do not represent the entire population. And yes, there are a lot of Americans on the ground who are protesting. I saw a really nice video today of this protest where a bunch of Jews, Hebrew speaking Jews, like the real old school, the OGs, the
Hmm.
Orthodox Jews, they joined forces with people who were protesting in favor of Palestine. That was very heartening to see, and it was very nice that they were calling out Zionism for what it
Right.
really is, and trying to distance itself from Judaism.
Ah.
So it is heartening. It's hopefully going to work. All of these protests, all of this, all over the world, it has to, right? Because if it doesn't, and if this ends up in a case where we have an out and out genocide, history will not be forgiving to our time.
Not at all.
It's just not at all. Like somebody the other day asked me, why are you supporting uh, Palestine and not Israel. I'm just like, man, because I want to be able to sleep peacefully at night. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
because
I
once this
want,
happens, we know that so much more of this kind can happen. If we see it now, especially when we say
yeah,
2023,
yeah,
there's so much other kind of human progress that we talk about, we cherish, we celebrate. And then seeing this, you suddenly feel like, oh, but as you rightly said, we're just numbers and pawns in the game.
yeah. But I still see this as an opportunity where the universe is giving you a chance to be on the right side of history for a change.
Hmm.
Instead of wondering, hey, how did Hitler get away with this? What were all the other people doing? Now we are the other people.
Hmm.
And we are doing exactly what those people did, which is nothing. So I don't want to be one of those people who just sat by and did nothing or said nothing. And I know my contribution may not amount to much, but I'm hoping that whatever I say or do kind of uh, adds up with what other people are saying and doing. And somewhere we are still able to collectively exhibit some sense of humanity, because right now I can't feel it.
Yeah, and that small amount of reflection and portrayal of humanity is very, very needed. It's very much needed, right?
Yeah. And this whole thing of people feeling, what the situation is too complicated, so I can't pick a side. I'm going to sit this one out. No, it's not complicated.
Mm.
Quadratic equations are complicated. Calculus is complicated. You know, hooking up with somebody and not feeling it after you're done having sex with them, but still forcing yourself to continue so that you can get to the point where you hook up with them again and then pretending to like each other in between. That's complicated.
True.
Children being blown to bits is not complicated. Entire families being wiped out is not complicated. So choose your complication.
Yeah, I mean, there's no narrative that can rationalize this, right?
Exactly.
I mean, even I've been listening to all the arguments and even videos coming from
Yeah.
Israel. Nothing justifies this somehow. I don't know
It's
how somebody else is able to justify it. No.
it's ridiculous. The whole thing about Hamas started it. These people started it. Those people started it. KFC started it. McDonald's started it. At
Hmm.
this point, it doesn't really matter who started it. It doesn't matter what imaginary god of yours said that the land belongs to you. It doesn't matter what religion you follow. What matters right now is that there are real human beings, flesh and bone and blood, real human beings, just like you and I, who just want to live a life, who just want to go to school, who just want to, go to college, probably, get married, have a family, and just live a quiet, peaceful life. Everyday people like you and I are not being given a chance to do that. It's not complicated. It's a very simple thing to do. You don't even have to read up on hundreds of years of history. All you have to do is go like, hey, I see what's happening over there right now. That's not okay. Find a better way to do this. Because
And
this
we
will
have
never
enough,
stop.
sorry,
Yeah. Now go on.
we have enough reference points in terms of, I mean, I'm right now obviously using film as a analogy or maybe an example, but if there are terrorists and that's the reason and that's the story which is also difficult to buy for different reasons, but even if that's the case, there are ways to find them. There are ways to, so it's not that you have not had terrorist attacks before, you have not had criminals before, and you don't have agencies that can take care of it. That's what you have these agencies, service and protection for, right? The What's
Exactly.
the right? Yeah. So you could actually find them and just kill them if you really have to. But what is this massacre about?
I mean, deep down inside, we know what it's all about. I
Yeah.
think what these countries are counting on is the rest of the world being apathetic to it. But I am. hoping that that will not be the case. I'm hoping, and it's encouraging to see that voices are rising, people are banding together, and for all the atrocities that may have been committed in the past with different nations, especially those of people of color, where there was no voice, there was no way to communicate. I think it would be a goddamn shame if we as a species don't unite now. Like, if we don't get together and put a stop to this, then we have failed. It doesn't matter how many times we go to the moon, it doesn't matter what other planets we discover. If this doesn't stop, if what's going on right now in Palestine ends with the genocide of the Palestinians, we have failed. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but in our own
But
little ways,
yeah, but that
what
was the
we are all
longest
doing,
pause I've ever had on the podcast.
I think it was called for, no? I mean,
Yeah,
how do
it is.
we
But
respond? Hmm.
like I said earlier, even in the darkest of glooms, I think all it takes is for one person to shine a light. And thankfully, we're at a stage where hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world are shining a light. Hundreds of thousands of people all over the world are standing on the right side of history. I think all you and I have to do is make sure we join them. So wherever you are, uh, shine your light as well. You don't have to take a flight and go to another country and protest. If there's one happening near you, go join the protest. If there isn't one happening near you, that's okay as well. Just share information about the protest, spread the word that what's happening right now is wrong, that we need to take a stand. Talk to the people around you, get them in on this as well. Hey guys, come on, just like talk about this. We can't go about our daily lives as if this isn't happening. It's bizarre. So I think it's natural to feel a little defeated right now. It's very natural to feel as helpless as we are, but I'd still like to have some faith in the human spirit that uh, we will eventually end up on with an ending that doesn't involve wiping off an entire nation of its people. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, in whatever way you can stand up for uh, those who cannot stand up for themselves, just do it.
And I
Yeah,
was just adding that the good side of social media is that every voice really counts. It does. So
it does.
nobody
It
is,
does.
yeah, nobody's
every
less
every voice
important.
counts, trust me. Nobody knows better uh, about this than comedians who get hated on every 6 months for something they posted on social media. Every voice counts. Yeah. So just like you channel all that energy and hatred for somebody's work, channel that same energy towards probably saving somebody else's life. You never know. The next time something like this happens, it might be ours, man. You know, I'm just happy we're surrounded by the nations that we are. You know,
Yeah.
like the only real threat is China, but they are more into like economic occupation than invading your country. The nearest white country to us is Russia, and they don't invade countries, so we're good. I think like this is us scraping the bottom of the barrel for like some laugh or a chuckle
I
in
know.
this
Yeah, we
weird,
looked for
weird
it.
space,
Yeah.
weird space. But I hope that just by how we've had this conversation, I hope that other people talk to each other, and maybe there's uh, this little comfort in the helplessness where you realize that you're not the only one feeling helpless. We are all feeling helpless in some way or another, and I think through that understanding, maybe we'll be able to find some strength.
Yeah. Coming together.
Yeah, come together in your helplessness, find your strength, and hopefully by this time next year, we'll live in a world that's a much better place than it currently is.
Mm.
Right?
Right.
On that note, Ishita, I would like to end this podcast by giving you a hug, but I can't do that. But so I am sending you lots of love and good energy. And I know that as depressing as this situation may be, uh, we'll hopefully get through it. Oh,
Mm. Yep.
and I hope better sense prevails.
No, these conversations are helpful, as I was saying. Then
Yeah.
it doesn't remain depressing. Then it's about
Yeah.
finding people in solidarity, feeling
Yeah.
that hope and connectivity. So yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for having me
Thank
here
you
to
as well. I
bitch
think
about.
we both helped each other. Yeah. This was a sort of a cathartic bitching session.
Hmm.
Yeah. And hopefully the next time we chat will be under better circumstances.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
looking
That
forward to
is
that.
the hope. That is the hope. That and India winning the World Cup.
Oh yes.
Awesome.
The
All right,
World Cup
Isha.
is
This was an
ours.
absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Danny.
Awesome. You take care. Have a good night.
Good night.